wave your flag, wave your rag, wave your hand from left to right. Raise it up, raise it up. Everybody know just how to jump up. PPP, take it back. PPP, take it back. PPP, take it back. PPP, take it back.
PPPC is the party for we. Watch how they call it with old PNC. What they don't know is a bigger victory. They say they will never call it, they will stay as KFC. Now they're gonna marry old PNC. Oh, PPPC is the party for we. Watch how they call it with old PNC. Valentine
Since 1950 we in the service of this blessed country. Not once did we flinch or abandon our duty, no, our duty. With blows from the British and even our own. Guyana never stopped being a place to call home. They rigged and rigged, but we stayed because endured terror and repression, what a heavy cross. It is time to rally for we party and country. Vote for the PPPC. It is time to rally for we party and country. Vote for the PPPC. I am free, I am me, I have the right. Vote for the PPPC. I am free, yes I am me, I have the right. Vote for the PPPC. We sing this song for our beloved Chedi.
Thank you very much, Common Chairman, comrades and friends. We are here today because, as you know, on May 11th we'll have general elections. Elections are not constitutionally due in Guyana until the end of next year, beginning of 2017. And I could have stayed in office by just proroguing the parliament, call it back and prorogue it again, because I did not have to call elections when I did. But I know that if I did that, it could have an impact on our economy. And I don't want to do anything. I am not president and don't want to be president if I cannot do things for the people of this country. And that is why I decided to call these elections now. Because for me, presidency, for me and the PPP, being president and being in government is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. What we want to do fundamentally is to lift the quality of life of all the people of our country, so that everyone, we can end poverty, we can end ignorance, and all our the country can become a modern society. That is what we are about. And I had to prorogue the parliament on November 10th last year because the opposition tried to pass a no confidence motion in the government. And if I had allowed the no confidence motion to be passed, it means immediately that the parliament would have been shut down. So when I prorogued the parliament, I actually extended the life of the parliament. And why did I do that? I did it for two reasons mainly. The first thing why I did it, is because I knew that in the last elections, many people, mainly people in the interior, but a lot of people on the coast as well, did not get their names on the voters list because GCOM changed their criteria and they were asking for source documents. And many people did not have their birth certificates. So at the last elections, some of them did not actually get on the voters list. And therefore, I wanted to give GCOM an opportunity to have another round of registration so that more people could have gotten on the list. And that is what actually happened. With the new registration that GCOM did, the new round of registration, more than 7,000 new people came on the voters list. Comrades, the other reason why I did it is because we have very important bills in the Parliament, and I wanted to have these bills discussed and passed now before the elections, because if we pass them now, we will have had a better opportunity to give the Guyanese people a better life. One of these bills was the liberalization of telecommunication. Comrade Fanali touched on that just now. That would have allowed more companies to come involved in the telecommunication system and would have allowed us to be able to bring down the cost of bandwidth for internet access and to widen the spread throughout the country so that everyone could have had internet service. The opposition refused to talk about that. And that is very important because it is important to economic development as well. Communication is vital now in any economy. The second bill that we have in Parliament that I wanted to pass now was the modernization of education bill. Since 1966, we did not have a new bill to modernize our education system. And we needed to do that. We needed to modernize the education system because we need to align our education with more of the needs of the people to create the jobs in science, technology, in all of these areas, energy, in mathematics. We need to have that kind of education so that we can line them up with the jobs that we want to create in Guyana. Again, the opposition refused. They refused to talk about that bill. And the third bill we wanted to pass was the anti-money laundering bill. The anti-money laundering bill came out of an international process. Actually, it began at the United Nations Security Council because of the rise of terrorism in the world. And they're looking for new ways and means to fight the terrorists. And to do that, to fight terrorism, the world believes that all the financial sectors in every country should have similar kind of regulations. Similar kind of regulations so that no country will be able to, the criminals, international criminals, will not be able to use no country as a safe haven. And if we do not pass that bill, then the international community can blacklist our country. And if they blacklist our financial sector, all of us will suffer because the financial sector in an economy is as important as it's like what your heart is to your body. If your heart is not functioning well, it affects your whole body. And the same thing in an economy if the financial sector is affected. When the opposition voted against the anti-money laundering bill on 2 occasions, 2 times they voted against it. They were voting, in fact, because they voted against it, they were voting against the Guyanese people because they know that blacklisting of our country will hurt every single person in Guyana. But they don't care. They want power at all costs. They don't care if the country is broken up. They want to break it up in the hope that we will get unpopular and they can win an election. But the other thing that when they vote against this bill, they actually vote to support the criminals in our society, the drug lords. They are actually protecting the drug lords when they vote. On 2 occasions, not 1 time, 2 times, they had an opportunity to vote and both times they voted against this bill, which put them squarely on the side of the criminals in our society. This is the nature of the people that we're dealing with. They vote because what this bill is about. This bill, like all the other countries in the world, got this law. This law is if you catch a drug man, or if you catch a man trafficking in persons, and you catch them, you can send them to jail, but not only send them to jail, you can take their property, you can take their money from the bank. That is what the law, because they believe that one of the ways to fight these international terrorists is to go after the money. And they believe that a lot of the money from drug trafficking goes to finance international terrorism. But this is the law, this is the bill that they actually voted against in our country. This is what they voted against. And in doing so, as I said, they actually ended up supporting and protecting the criminals in Guyana. That is the nature of the people that we're dealing with. But I'll come back to more of that just now. They have done, in the last 3 years, they have done everything to try to stymie the development, to prevent our country from moving forward. But even though they did that, our country still grew every year by 4.5% and 5% every single year. And we managed to keep the cost of living down. In fact, in 2013, the inflation rate, meaning that the price rates in the country, were the lowest ever in the history of independent Guyana. These are important achievements that we have made, because you have to take into consideration that our achievements were made at a time when the international economic situation was bad, when there was a financial and economic crisis in North America and Europe. In fact, that crisis is still going on in Europe. And when you take into consideration that in North America and Europe are Guyana's largest trading partners, and the Caribbean largest trading partners. And when you look at what that did to the Caribbean, for instance, in Barbados, thousands of workers are being dismissed from their jobs. In St. Lucia, workers are accepting pay cuts in order to keep their jobs. In Grenada, unions are not putting up any demands for increase in pay in order for workers to keep their jobs. Unemployment in those countries are sometimes 40%, like in Grenada. In Guyana, we continue to have positive economic growth despite the fact that we have such a bad international economic situation. And more than that, internally, the opposition has not lifted a finger. They did not use their one-seat majority at no time to try to promote development in Guyana. They never told us, they never said, government, you need to build more schools. Or government, you need to build more roads. Or government, you need to build more hospitals. Or government, you need to invest more in the productive sector. Never one day did they make those claims. Instead, they used their one-seat majority to try to cut $89 billion, not million, $89 billion. They used their one-seat majority to try to cut out from the budget to prevent us from spending that money for you. What were they cutting? What were they cutting from the budget? They were cutting. Irfan mentioned just now to you that we have this university education, and many children from Leguan, many students from Leguan now attending the University of Guyana. For those of you who cannot afford the fees, the government has provided money to give a loan to every student who wants to attend the University of Guyana. And that student will not have to pay back that money until they finish their university education and start to work. That is one of the things they want to cut from the budget. How can they now want to come back and tell you that they're interested in young people when their one-seat majority try to deprive young people of a tertiary education? If we did not put back the money, many students would not have been able to attend the University of Guyana. What else did they cut? You remember last year? Last year we gave to you, the parents, for every child that you had in school, from kindergarten right up to secondary level, we gave you $10,000 for every child you had in school. I was telling the comrades the other day, if the government used to give that money when I was going to school, my father would have been a rich man. Because you know, he came from up the river here. He was a timberman. He used to sell timber right in this Leguan area. And he was a very productive timberman too. He had 9 of us children. 9 picked he had. So if the government was giving $10,000 per child then he would have collected about $90,000. But if that is one of the money that the opposition tried to cut from the budget, the $10,000 that we give you for each child, they wanted to cut that out of they cut it out actually. They voted against it. If we did not put it back, you would not have had that $10,000 per child. You see, the point I'm trying to make, they are cutting things that have a direct impact on the people's lives of our country. They cut the Amerindian Development Fund. You know that the Amerindian community, historically, from the time of colonialism, that they were actually neglected by the colonial powers, and then they were neglected by the PNC. Only now they are writing examinations and they have access to secondary education. And we are doing that because you know that we have vast resources in the interior, and the interior has tremendous potential for development. And when we develop those areas, all the country will blossom and bloom. And we have to invest in the people to make them more productive and creative, to be able to develop the wealth that we have in the interior. They cut that out of the budget. They don't want to see people's lives improve. That is what we have been facing all the time. But worse than that, they put the country in harm's way. Deliberately, not by accident, but deliberately. I told you just now about the anti-money laundering bill and how they tried to prevent us and how they stopped that bill from being passed. If we don't pass that bill by September of this year, they will blacklist Guyana. That is another reason why we had to call these elections now. The only reason that our country is not yet blacklisted is because the international community, the FATF and the CFATF, they recognize that the government is trying to do everything we're trying to do to try, except passing the legislation where we don't have the majority in the parliament. We built SOKU, we equipped them, we have new equipment, fighting against criminals every day. And the international community recognized that. And that is why they haven't blacklisted us as yet. But if we don't pass that legislation by September, they said that we could be blacklisted. So comrades, but there are others. For instance, we want to develop tourism. We see tourism as a very important sector that can allow us to earn more money and us to have greater revenues to do more things for the people of Guyana. But to develop the tourism that we want, we need new infrastructure. And first and foremost, we need a modern airport. We can become a hub. We can become a hub for the whole world in the whole question of air transport. If you look at the map and look at where Guyana is, you will see that we are halfway in the world between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And that gives us a possibility of becoming an aerial hub for the world. But we can't take advantage of our geographic position because our airstrip is too short. Already, the South African Airlines would like to put it in transit here on their way to North America. But they can't land here because the airstrip is too small for the size of planes that they're flying with. And we need, therefore, to correct that. And many of you here travel. You have families in Canada. I just see Churchill around. Churchill living in Canada now. We have families in Canada. You have family in the United States. You have families in England. And many of you travel very often now. And you know, when you come back home, if the rain is falling, you can't come out of the plane. So we need these things to develop this sector. The opposition, wickedly, they voted for that project in 2013. And when they voted for the project in 2013, we went and signed a contract to build a new airport. And 2014, they voted against it. When they vote against it, it means that if we didn't put back the money, we could have been sued by the company for billions of dollars for breach of contract. So the opposition deliberately set out to put our country in harm's way. There's another example that I want to give you about their deliberate attempt to try to damage our country. You know, we have a tax that is called the environmental tax that we put on plastic bottles for those drinks that come in the country. But that tax is not on banks DIH and on DDL. And a company in Suriname, because of the agreement we have with CARICOM, we're supposed to have one tax for everybody in CARICOM. And the company in Suriname sued us because they said the tax was discriminatory against their product. That's a chubby drink, I think it is, that you have there. That company sued the government, but they were willing to settle. They told us that if we pass the law so that all of us will have equal treatment, they will withdraw the case. The case went to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And we went to the Parliament. We had a tax of $10 per bottle that they were paying. And we decided that we will lower the tax to $5 per bottle, but we will carry the tax right across the board to include banks DIH and DDL, so that the country will not be sued for millions of United States dollars. But the opposition again voted against that, and we lost the case. We lost the case in the Caribbean Court, and our country now will have to pay millions of United States dollars to that company. And that was unnecessary. That was totally unnecessary. But these people are not interested in development. They are not about development. They are about breaking up. They are about wrecking the country. We took this country from being one of the poorest countries in the world. It was described as a heavily indebted poor country. Today, it is described as a middle-income developing country. And it's not me saying that. Carl Greenwich, I have in my hands here an affidavit, the affidavit of Carl Greenwich, who was the finance minister, the last finance minister in the PNC government. They have he had the affidavit in the last finance minister in the PNC government. He was giving this affidavit to the International Chamber of Commerce Arbitration. And this is what he said. Now, Ramotar, I'm reading the words that Carl Greenwich wrote about what this country was like under the PNC. And here is what he said. He said, Guyana is one of the poorest countries in the world and the second poorest in the Western Hemisphere. That is what the PNC, now calling themselves APNU, that is what they did to Guyana. Why I point this out? Because when the coalition government in 1964 took power, Guyana was the most developed country in the English-speaking Caribbean. And here, Carl Greenwich talking about our country in the early 1990s, and he himself is saying that Guyana is one of the poorest countries in the world. He went on to say how bankrupt our country was. He said by 1989, Guyana's external debt to gross domestic product ratio was approximately 925%. What do you mean by that? That the debt that we had was 925%, 9.25 times bigger than the economy of the country. And everything that we produced, the debt was 9.25 times bigger than the economy of the country. He went on to add, he said how much we were in arrears, 1.4 billion in arrears, owed across the spectrum to international institutions, foreign country donors, commercial banks, and other creditors. In 1990, this is Greenwich again, in 1990, the external debt to export ratio was 951%. Between 1986 and 1990, Guyana's average annual debt service payments was Guyana's average annual debt service payments was 153% of fiscal revenues. What does he mean here? What does he mean here? He said that the external debt, that only the money we owe to foreign countries and institutions, was 9.5 times bigger than all the money we earned from exporting in Guyana. This is what they brought our country to. And he said the money that we had to pay back to service the debt was 153% of the money we were earning. Meaning that we had reached a stage where we were borrowing to pay back the debts, borrowing to service the debts of our country. Comrades, what it is today? What is it today? Greenwich said then, or admitted, that the debt was 9.25 times bigger than our economy. Today, the debt is only 60%, 60% of our economy. That is the management and the quality of management that the PPP Civic has given you. And the servicing, he said there that 153% of the revenue had to go to servicing, more than what we were earning. Today, it is 4%. 4% of the revenue we are paying to service the debts that we have abroad. And yet these people talk about governance. They talk about governance. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't care. And they're shameless. They come to lie about what the performance that they had. Comrades and friends, we are about building our country. We are about wanting to take our country to higher levels. What we want to do, we want to build a modern, developed society where everyone can have a big stake in the society. To do that, we have the need to have new and apply new technology. Information and telecommunication technology is on now the cutting edge. Irfan mentioned to you just now, just across the river at Tushen, we will be building a station there that will employ 900 persons by information technology. But we will do more than that. We can build much more and create high-paying jobs. That is why we are spending so much of money on education. No country in the world, or very few, I can't think about any, but maybe they are. But if they are, they're very, very few. Where the government give your children textbooks, free textbooks to go to school. We spend billions of dollars to buy textbooks for our children. Where in the world does that happen? We give them free exercise books. We built more than 1,000 schools since we came into office. We give a hot meal in some schools. We give snacks to help you to take the pressure off of you to keep your children in school. We give you assistance in uniform vouchers for your children so that they can attend school looking good. Even if you can't, if you're not in an economic position, the government gives you this. Where else? What else do you want from a people's government? Where in the world does this happen? That is what we've been doing. And why are we doing this? We're doing this as an investment in our future. Because if you look around the world of countries that are developed and countries that are poor, you will see that the countries that are developed are the countries where you have a higher level of educational development. And just think about Guyana. In 1992, when it said we were the poorest country in the world. We were the poorest, one of the poorest countries in the world. And at that time, our educational system was at the bottom, was at the pits. And now, our country is the fastest growing economy. The fastest growing economy right now in the whole Caribbean. Guyana's economy is the fastest growing economy because we have a developing and highly educated people now. You can see it corresponds with the development of the economy that we have. And comrades, in the future, we have to look at the new technologies that are coming on. Right now we are looking for oil and gas. The SO company is drilling for oil outside of our shore. Very soon, Guyana will become an oil and gas producing country. That will create a tremendous amount of jobs, directly and indirectly. The byproducts, the petroleum jelly, the lubricants, all of that we will be able to produce right here. And we want our people to benefit from that. And for them to benefit from that, we have to have an educated workforce. And when we have an educated workforce, more investors will come to take advantage of an intellectual and developed workforce that Guyana is producing. And that is why our country can grow and grow much faster, even though The opposition did their best to try to stop our development in the last 3 years. We still grew. But we could have been growing faster. We could be growing at 10% and more an annum if we had the majority in the National Assembly. That is how fast we could have been growing. And to do that also, we need to have cheap energy. Cheap energy is vital to our development. Right now, we subsidize your electricity bill by more than $6 billion every year. Every year, we spend that money so that you don't have to pay more for your electricity. We want to build, that is why we have to try to get cheap energy, so that we can have greater possibilities for our development. Comrades, that is one of the reasons we wanted to build the Mila Falls, as Irfan mentioned to you just now. Why? Because the Mila Falls, whether you get power from it or not, you will benefit. The moment we start to get electricity from a Mila, your light bill will come down by between 20 and 40%. Just by that, you will be having more money in your pockets. That is what we will be doing. But more than that, as he mentioned, it will open the possibility for us to create a manufacturing sector where we have built things. Our agriculture sector, we can process them. Comment? Yes, and so you will be able to have manufacturing jobs, high-paying jobs. That is why we have been building technical institutes at Lenora, at Regina, in Myconi, in New Amsterdam, at Linden, at Port Moran, because we have to give our people the skills so that they will be able to earn big money. The investors are not going to come here to take advantage of cheap labor. They are going to come here to take advantage of brain power that we're creating in our country. So, this is the project that the opposition voted against in the parliament and made the Blackstone company, who we were partnering with, they walked away. But this project is so important that already we have had discussions, an open discussion with new company. And when we win the elections on May 11th, before the end of this year, I hope we will start to build the Mila Falls hydroelectric project. Yes, we have to win. We have to win for your sake, for your children's sake, and for the sake of the future of this country. Because we know that the opposition record, Greenwich himself said, what is their record? That is why they changed their name. They don't want to talk about history. They don't want to talk about the past. Because elections are also to judge people on their record. They don't have a record. They changed their names. It's the same old PNC, but they're now calling themselves Abdu, and they're saying we didn't have nothing to do with the past. Who wants to change their name? Nobody wants to change their name. Maybe some young girls, when they want to get married, they might want to change them. But even them, nowadays, these young girls, they don't change their name anymore. They want to add on the name. But when you want to change your name, it's because you're a scamp. You're a thief. You're hiding from the police. You're disguising. And that is what they have to do, is a bunch of scamps hiding from their past. Hiding from the PNC past. Comrades, we have to be careful. We know how much they damaged Guyana in the past. They wrecked Guyana, and today they continue to try to wreck our country. But we cannot allow them. We cannot allow them to pull us down. We have to ensure that we win the majority and keep going forward. That is the task. That is the task that is ahead of us. We have to build not only the new technology, the new sectors, like the information and communication sector, not only the tourism that can become a new sector, but we have to modernize. We have to modernize the traditional sector. The rice industry itself is one of the most important industries in this country. It employs thousands of people. Thousands of people it employs, and it earns important foreign exchange earning for Guyana. And therefore, it is an industry that has to be supported and has to be modernized and improved. The government spent billions of dollars in P&I to improve agricultural practices. We spent already more than $1.5 billion to protect Leguan on sea defenses. Actually, what Irfan said is so true, that they wanted to allow the sea to wash away the island and force you to migrate from here. They didn't want to spend money to defend the island. That is what they were trying to do. And that is why it is so important for us to win these elections in a big way. In a big way. Because these people have there for them. Power for them is not to try to do anything for our country. For them, power is to try to lord it over people. They want to lord it over people. Look at the discussions that they had. Look at the discussions that they had when they said they were negotiating the new coalition. They were not talking. They were not talking about what they will do for Guyana. They were not talking about what programs they have. They were talking about who will be Prime Minister and who will be President and who will be Minister of Finance, and negotiation, how much power they should have. They were not talking anything about the people of this country. So, for the opposition, progress for them, development for them is not important, it's incidental. If it happens, it happens. The most important thing for them is to have power in their hands. For us, it's important for us to have the government so that we can do things for the people of this country. And comrades, therefore we have to modernize. We have to look at new variety. We have to apply more science. The new farmers have to be more educated than their parents have been, to use new techniques, new varieties. And we, the government will create a price support mechanism. We will support prices to try to ensure that our farmers enjoy a better life in this country. Comrades, the same thing can be said of sugar. The sugar industry is a very important industry in Guyana. Over the years, it fell into difficult times. Why did it fall into difficult times? It fell into difficult times because the Europeans, they reneged on an agreement that we had, the sugar protocol, when they were supposed to buy sugar from African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries at preferential prices. In 2010, they cut the price for sugar by 36%. And Guyana now is not the Guyana of 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Sugar had no problems with finding labor. There was no competition for labor for sugar. Now, you have the construction industry developing because the Finale is building thousands of houses. He's on my back to build a new city to give people their own houses. We have development in the mining sector. We have now the new oil and gas sector coming on stream. We have new facilities, our economy is broader now, much broader. And therefore the competition for labor is greater. And therefore we need to mechanize and restructure the sugar industry so that it can survive and continue to make. We have to make it more flexible so that when prices of sugar are low, that we will produce alcohol. And when prices of sugar is high, we produce sugar. Because we are price takers in this country. But the opposition voted against us giving assistance to the sugar industry. They even tried to take their fund in front of the Privilege Committee, and all he was trying to do was to get money to help poor sugar workers. Poor sugar workers, they spread all kind of propaganda that he's stealing the money and so forth. And last year, David Granger himself voted against the sugar industry getting more money to help it to restructure. Comrades, I tell you this because when we go for a president of a country, we must also look at character. Character is important. You have to have character. And David Granger has been inconsistent. He has been all over the place. Now he's saying, now that he's coming to elections, he's telling people that sugar is too big to fail. When last year, at the budget time, he voted against assisting the sugar industry. Carl Greenwich last week in the newspaper telling the government that we should not have anything to do with the rice industry. He said so. It's reported in the press. You can see why this man wrecked this country. 1990, rice production was 90,000 tons. 90,000 tons. Today it's more than 600,000 tons of sugar we are producing. And that we are producing that because the government was able to work to get markets in America, in South America, Central America, and we are looking for markets in Africa now, in the Caribbean, for our rice. But Greenwich is saying that the government must not do that. We must leave when we try to assist farmers to get paid, because sometimes the millers can't sell their rice, and we have to give advance to pay poor farmers. He's saying that we must not do that. Now that elections are coming, you will hear them changing their tune. We have to be careful with them. David Granger and the AFC, they voted against the Mila Falls project. But we heard him the other day saying that he wants to set up a hydro authority, the Upper Potaro Hydro Authority. This is dishonesty. This is dishonesty and inconsistency. How can you trust? How can you be a leader that can be trusted if you're saying, voting against something at one time and now saying you change your mind? Actually, his spokesman in Sugar at a press conference right in our news office said that we should shut the industry down and mine tilapia. And now he's telling us that sugar is too big to fail. Where is the real Granger? And comrades, we also have Stanley Ming. Stanley Ming, he was an advisor, the main economic advisor to the opposition. He is the man who was a one-time prime ministerial candidate for Desmond Hoyt. Now, he had recently said that we should shut the industry down, stop planting cane. But Granger is now changing his mouth because he's looking to try to fool people once again to try to get their votes. That shows you that the old saying that a leopard never changes its spots. They're saying Granger didn't have nothing to do with the past. Nagamutu, a sellout, a Nimakaram, a Harakati. He is now saying that Granger had nothing to do with the past. That is not true. David Granger was a commander in the army when they were stealing the ballot boxes. Joe Harmon was in the intelligence of the army when Walter Rodney was assassinated. They were there. They were there when our two comrades in the quarantine were murdered, asking for the votes to be counted in the place of poll. How can you trust these people? And more than that, when Burnham wanted to control the University of Guyana, he dismissed the board of the University of Guyana to put PNC people who he could control and tell them what to do. And you know who were the people he put there? Hamilton Green and David Granger. So David Granger was always a tool against the Guyanese people. And we talk now about character. Now Nagamutu and Ramjatan saying that they change, that they're different people. But they can't change because this is their nature. Their nature is like that. Comrades and friends, these elections are important. They're important for you, for the people of this country. They're important for your children. They're important for all the people of Guyana. They will determine, because you remember, as I said just now, there was another coalition, 1964, when they got rid of Jagan, and they wrecked the country. But these elections will determine if we will continue on the way forward. That is what these elections will determine. I ask you today for your support. I ask you individually and collectively for your support. We need your support. The last time, 2011, must be used as a lesson to us. Many of us were saying that we win already. There was overconfidence in many of our supporters. And they stayed home and did not vote. And they nearly put our country in great danger. We will not win this election with those type of attitudes. All of us, all of you, those of you who have not yet collected your ID cards, you must ensure that you collect your ID cards. These elections will determine jobs for your children, for the young people. That is what we are about. That is what we are fighting for. And once more, I ask you for your support so that together we can make Guyana realize its full potential and be one of the best countries in the world. I thank you so much for your attention.
Friends, let us put our hands together for the President of the Cooperative Republic. Comrades, I'm very serious now. No, hold it.
chocolate right there. Very don't make me not take away TV, I'm hero. Don't make me. Thank you.